Today, we're sitting around a table at one of London's most historic pubs, the old Dr. Butler's Head in Mason's Lane, an alleyway close to the Guildhall in the City of London. The pub was established in Stuart times in 1610, while the present building dates back to just after the Great Fire of London, which, we all know, was 1666. But who was Dr. Butler, you might ask? Well, he was a 17th century self-proclaimed nerve specialist whose unconventional miracle cures included dropping clients into the Thames through a trapdoor on London Bridge, unexpectedly firing a pistol at a patient to scare them out of epilepsy, if not entirely out of their wits, and plunging those with plague into icy cold water. So admired was he for these ingenious cures, even if they didn't always work, he was appointed court physician to James I, exercising a path to career advancement that's not entirely unknown up to the present day. He went on to develop a medicinal ale, which was only available from taverns which displayed Dr. Butler's head on their sign. He ended up owning quite a few London alehouses, but alas, the old Dr. Butler's Head, where we're coming from today, is the last one of these still standing. Much to my disappointment, they've run out of the good doctor's medicinal ale, which I've been looking forward to. I'm having to get by on a bit of medicinal Guinness. And I have to say, it's marvelous. Welcome to the world for another recording of TimeTable, the podcast for lovers of London by lovers of London. Not necessarily exclusively about topics to do with London, but that's where we start. As with so many good pub conversations, they can start in London and they end up going anywhere. I'm really pleased to be joined, as usual, by my co-host, Jeff Browell, senior archivist at King's. You're such a man for all seasons, Jeff. I don't know if is that the title du jour, or have you got...
Well, I don't want to end up like Thomas More, but...
The man for all seasons.
Yeah.
The Jeff for all seasons. Well, glad to have you with us. Here we are today for another issue or another recording of TimeTable in old Dr. Butler's pub in... Do we say this is Moorgate?
Mason's Avenue.
Mason's Avenue. A helpful interjection already from today's guest. Very pleased to be joined today by Laura Miller from Guildhall. It says on your LinkedIn, Laura, that you are working in the Commissioner's office and you've got paragraphs of what you do, but I still can't get a fix on what you do in terms of you're the president of this or the chief bottle washer of that. What's your...
My title is quite plain. I'm the clerk of the Chamberlain's court. But it's not really a court that sends people to prison or gives them fines. And it's not the Chamberlain that most people are used to. My duties largely revolve around organising, administering and presenting people with the freedom of the City of London.
Well, that's a happy coincidence to begin with, because, Jeff, you were made one of these many storied people, weren't you? Do you recall Laura from the day?
Yes, I do, yes. And Laura did a fantastic job, and we were all just ushered through, and it happened, and it was all seamless, and it was all a success. But perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what the freedom of the City of London consists of.
It's quite hard to... encapsulate something that's got a history that, in a sense, goes back more than 1,000 years. But simply put, it's a traditional citizenship that you earned as a resident of the City of London, which enabled you to trade in the City of London. But attached to being able to trade were lots of very, very important rights that a peasant wouldn't have. So it was a very desirable thing to obtain. Essentially, it's the Anglo-Saxon way of running a city or a community. And it's quite modern because, in a sense, it's based on the fact that, just for argument's sake, let's say the aristocracy, you can't necessarily expect them to produce intelligent offspring. And I would argue that if they do, there was never any great reason for them to do any work. So how were you going to people your cities with imaginative, effective, talented, hard-working, and occasionally sneaky people to pay those taxes and keep things going? And the freedom's a way of doing it. It's a way of pulling people out and giving them power and business rights and responsibility. And that's as good as I can do in a couple of sentences, but it's a much, much bigger thing, much bigger.
So how do you fit into that power structure?
Well, I wouldn't say that I have any power. I act on behalf of the Chamberlain of the City of London. That's the person. It's currently Caroline Albayerti, who you could describe as the chief accountant of the City of London. But the City of London isn't really like other cities, and being an accountant of it is not quite the same. It's her court, but I'm the person who actually conducts the ceremonial side of things. It's a simple but ancient ceremony.
How do you choose who's going to be a Freeman?
Well, I don't choose them.
No, but why was Jeff chosen, for instance?
Well, that was more by luck than design.
that could be part of the answer. But so what do you have to do to qualify?
Actually, it's not a case of doing things to qualify. It's a case of, I'd say, at the risk of sounding somewhat Buddhist about it, it's a case of being. It's given to people who it's not an honour. You don't get it as some kind of reward. It's a recognition. Traditionally, it's kind of citizenship. And it says that you are a person who does things, who's involved, who's interesting. So a singular percent, quite a large percentage of people who receive it have been nominated. We have a large number of liverymen in the City of London. They can nominate. So we see all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, all countries. It's not an exclusive thing. It's an inclusive thing. However, there are a number of things that make it very, very remarkable, not least the group of people you join when you get it. And also you can drive your sheep across London Bridge. What more do you want?
As everybody always asks.
It is London Bridge. I was told once it was Southwark Bridge.
Well, actually,
because that's the one that leads up to the Guildhall. But am I wrong?
Actually, technically, the freedom of the City of London is the right to trade. It would be absolutely nonsensical if you couldn't bring goods in and out. Sheep just happen to be very important. So it's really any route of ingress into London. So it could be any of the bridges. Traditionally, it's more likely to be London, Southwark or Blackfriars because they are closest. But of course, the sheep wouldn't be being driven to Guildhall. They would be being driven to Smithfield. So it's only from the south of the river, really. I mean, if you were coming from the north, you dump all your sheep at Islington and to go take them on to Smithfield, which is why Islington in the past smelt to high heaven because it was full of livestock.
Right. So to address any possible confusion amongst our listeners at hearing me kick off the podcast, I'm Tam MacDonald of Cradle of English, by the way, and I've introduced my longtime co-host Jeff Browell from King's College London. But his lifelong passion for understanding more about the protocols for managing his sheep on London's bridges, our executive producer has felt minded to pitch in with a question. So thanks, Christopher. Tell us about a little bit yourself and your background.
Well, my background is varied, to put it mildly, but I produce podcasts. I do my own podcast. I write books. And I produce podcasts of those books, which I put with music and various actors doing different voices and that sort of thing. So I love podcasts because you can do what you like with a podcast. But I did, for a long time ago, work for Terry Wogan on his TV chat show. And Laura told me earlier that Terry Wogan was a Freeman of the City of London.
Absolutely. And I believe my predecessor told me that for the whole week beforehand, Terry was constantly referring to this, and that ultimately he was rather disappointed that he couldn't actually just scoop up sheep and drive them across the bridge whenever he wanted to.
He would have loved doing that.
He would love doing that, but it really does. I mean, you have to love sheep if you do this job because I get asked about them constantly. All right?
So where are the sheep going to be? Are they herded? Flocked?
Well, they're herded. They're driven.
Driven
Sheep across
driven,
the bridge.
Aren't they? Yeah.
We use the same. It's organised by the Worshipful Company of Woolmen, who are one of our livery companies, very naturally, and they use the same shepherds and the same flock every year because sheep famously take their cue from other sheep. We don't want any sheep jumping in the river, and in fact, the sheep are really, really well behaved. Occasionally we have one break for the border, but generally they want to get to the other side because they're getting treats and attention. I think the only person that was confronted by naughty sheep was the rather wonderful Mary Berry, and it was felt that she kept on referring to shepherd's pie. So there's a word of warning to you: if you decide to herd your sheep, do not mention mint sauce or lamb chops or kebabs. Our sheep are woolly sheep; they're not.
Yeah.
I can see the glazing over of their eyes now. The horror. Where are the sheep going to be driven to when Smithfield disappears? Because that's a big deal.
Of
the
course,
Smithfield meat market is going.
And where's it
these
going?
years.
Do we know yet? Is it
Well,
finalised?
I don't think it's going anywhere. It's going to disappear
Just going to
altogether.
disappear.
I
Which is
think
tragic.
I think there are discussions and conversations. I mean, there's a number of reasons why it would be a bit hard to keep it there. I mean, really, most meat, I believe, is sold at supermarkets, and they're storing it sort of outside the city. It's really a question of whether the traders decide that they want to maintain their community. I mean, I've got quite an interest in this because my grandfather was actually a Smithfield meat man.
Wow.
He was the managing director of a big company called Swanenbergs, and they used to import all the meat from South America. So I spent quite a lot of my childhood around the market and the bummeries and the people. He had offices near Charterhouse, and I do wonder what my grandfather would have thought. But my grandfather was very much, he was very much a person for progress, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a meat trade. It's about making money and selling good meat. So we'll see. I mean, the buildings are staying.
Yeah.
Which I think, we've seen other markets repurposed, so we wait and see.
It's going to be the Museum of London or the London Museum.
Part of it,
Museum,
isn't it?
Yeah,
Old
and that
cold
looks,
store or
and
something.
that looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you been inside?
I not since they've started renovating it. I've seen photographs, but I've seen the plans, and it looks fantastic. I mean, it really does.
It goes quite a long way underground level, doesn't it? Presumably there are cellars and things underneath.
Oh, they've found loads of new cellars. And so the project has changed constantly. But you're going to be able to watch the underground trains whizzing through.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah,
Just like a bonfire.
yeah.
So you have a long connection with London then?
Very, very long. I mean, we believe my family have been here in some form probably since the 1670s. We come from just across the river. So very much a South Londoner.
Southwark?
Southwark and North Lambeth. So Vauxhall. And the area around Bermondsey and that kind of area. I grew up around Stockwell and Brixton, so not too far away.
So for the freedom of the City of London then, can it be awarded to people of any nationality?
Yes.
So there must be Japanese and there must be other nationalities who receive it every year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this afternoon, a very prominent Kenyan philanthropist is receiving freedom. So we do see people. I don't think that I'd be very surprised if I could find a country that hasn't had one of its citizens receive the freedom. Until I think it was 1999, technically the ordinary freedom was only given to British Commonwealth citizens. But of course, in the old colonial days, that covered a wide range of people. The freedom system used to be very common across Europe. But if you look at it, the City of London has always been remarkably international. So it really, surprisingly so.
And where does the ceremony take place now?
Well, just at the end of the road here. It's why it took me 5 minutes to get here, and it's why if I look around here later today, I'm likely to see colleagues. It takes place in the Chamberlain's Court. The Chamberlain's Court is one of the oldest courts in the country. And we've been dispensing freedom since about 1237. And I'm only, I think, the 38th person to be clerk since the 1290s.
Really?
So it's quite an old job.
Is it a job for life?
It's a job until you've had enough, I think. I mean, it's my predecessor, Murray Craig, held the job for a long time. I've been clerk for 3 years now. My 3-year anniversary was on April Fool's Day, so every April Fool's Day I celebrate being clerk for another year. But I was deputy clerk for a long time. It's a very unusual job. It's a very interesting job. It's a very ancient job. You never know who you're going to see. But you do have to like people, and you do have to love London.
Well, there you go. Boy, this is the spiritual home. So are you a Freeman?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And you are a Freeman. We don't say you're a free person or a...
No, I mean, in the past it used to be free sister. But if we're going to get into the history of language, of course, man was never a gender-specific thing. It used to be woman if you were a woman, and we're man, W-E-R-E, if you were male. And we still use that for werewolf.
Oh, right. Yes.
So what's happened is the men have just felt themselves so important that they've believed that they can just drop that and man, so I know some people might complain about, but I think the term Freeman is non-gender.
Have women always been allowed to be freemen? Right,
Pretty much, yeah. The Victorians weren't very keen on us. The Victorian livery companies stopped admitting women, but you find that happens across the board during the Victorian period in all trades. But the City of London does occasionally give the freedom, vote some women for freedom themselves. And it's notable that during that period they gave Angela Burdett Coutts the freedom. Florence Nightingale was given the freedom right at the beginning of the Edwardian era. But no, you had to give women the freedom. And in fact, there are periods where 12 to 15% of freemen are women. They used to be called free sisters. Occasionally there's a debate about whether we should return to free sisters. Of course, now we'd be impinging on professions like nursing or religious orders. There are other groups of women calling themselves sisters.
So are you connected with any of the European equivalents?
Yeah, well, there are close friendships, particularly with groups in places like Zurich and Hamburg. And of course in France and Italy, the French have Girards and small groups looking after trades, particularly with wine. But one of the reasons we've survived is, for example, any of those countries that were invaded or taken over by Hitler during the Second World War, he did not like livery companies.
Well, it's well known that Hitler didn't like livery companies, isn't it?
Well, he sent the masters and the clerks and the people in charge of concentration camps.
Goodness me, because he felt that they were
an alternative
rivals.
power
Yeah.
basis. And I think the fact it survived here is because our livery companies have moved with there have been a couple of times when they've been in danger.
Such as when?
The late Victorian period, where basically the population looked at the livery, saw them for what they were bloated Victorian men's drinking clubs, and said, well, what's the point of these? And they fought very quickly, and they went back to basics and formed the City and Guilds qualifications and completely revolutionised trade education. So that there's a sort of strength there and flexibility
they move with
to them.
The times,
they move with
yeah.
the times. But on that occasion, they only, to a degree, they moved with the times because they had to.
Yeah.
But
because there have been at least several occasions when the Corporation of London was under threat as a whole, weren't there? I mean, I think after the Second World War and other periods then, or late Victorian times, or during the reforming era of the Victorian times, and then later on.
From who? Governments?
From central government,
royals?
I think,
Yeah,
and also from sort of rival sources of power within London, I guess. Because no one wants to have a rival power base. I mean, in the Middle Ages, the rivalry was between the City of London and Westminster.
Yes.
Because then you have the source of the Crown's power, ostensibly, in Westminster. And the point, to labour a point, given I always go on about the Strand in these podcasts, is the point at which those two forces met and collided was the Strand.
yeah, it is. It's an important colliding point. I mean, I know you're connected with King's College, which is on the Strand. I mean, the thing that always makes me laugh is Cromwell. One of our older livery companies is the Worshipful Company of Hackney carriage drivers. And of course, it was Cromwell having to deal with complaints that people were being overcharged when they were travelling from the Strand to the city. They weren't always being charged the same amount of people, and he introduced metering for taxes. And the suggestion is that it was the Westminster side who were untrustworthy.
Well, it was the watermen who were really upset by the new cab rank, which was actually installed below at the base of the Great Maypole.
Yeah.
That was the world's first taxi rank, and the watermen petitioned the king on multiple occasions to suppress these upstarts because they were killing their trade. And one of the most lucrative parts of their trade was to ferry people between Westminster and the city.
But before they assume any huge position on the moral high ground, should we recall also about the watermen that they got into difficulty because of their behavior during the Great Fire?
Well, I mean, none of the livery companies can necessarily... They all have stories that, if they go back long enough and they're old enough, they'll have stories.
They're a marvellous bunch, actually. I mean, I'm a member of the Worshipful Company of Stationers and Newspaper Makers.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, yes.
Which is also the company for writers, librarians, journalists, paper makers, printers, archivists. And they are marvellous, and quite a lot of their history is fighting with each other, but a lot of it is based around conflict with Westminster. And there is a reason why, to this day, banks, finance, they don't want to be there, because traditionally this was a safer place to be. If you were an ordinary working or business person, it's possibly, old Dr. Butler, the man who this pub is named after, was based in Cambridge. But doctors had to really base themselves here. Lawyers had to base themselves here because they were safer.
That's interesting, yeah.
Hi, this is Tam MacDonald, your host. If you're enjoying TimeTable London, then please tell your friends about us by sending them a link to the show, giving us a mention on social media, or even especially by chatting about us in the pub. TimeTable London, for everything you love about the world's greatest city.
So, apart from the freedom, what else do you do in your role as clerk?
Well, there's one thing that people don't realise is it's a real legal court, and although the freedom in its way is quite open, there's a whole series of admin. We have to work very closely with the London Archive, because the records of people receiving the freedom is one of the finest historical and genealogical archives in the world. We have to make sure we maintain that. We get a lot. You can imagine how many inquiries we get from the general public and from journalists. People are curious about it. There are a lot of freedoms. The freedoms alone keep us busy, but there's also quite a lot of outreach. We're involved in talking to schools, presentations, writing, research, and we also have a diplomatic role to play, because the freedom of the City of London is something that really no one else has. No other freedom is as long-reaching, as diverse, as wide. And it's a very warm ceremony. It's half an hour. People bring their families, their children. They receive a document. They're tailored. And it's almost, people often comment that they only see their families at weddings and funerals and christenings. And so it's often, they're very celebratory events, but they're also quite important for Londoners because it shows an interest and a belonging with London. I think when you become a Freeman of the City of London and you enter the city, you feel you're at home here. At least I hope that's how people feel.
Well, I certainly do.
That's the hope.
I bet you do.
So do you apply for it, or you have to be nominated?
You have to be nominated. But actually the nominators are far easier to find than you'd imagine. There are about 29,000 liverymen. If anyone is ever interested, they simply need to have a look at the PTA of their children's school, the local charities, the local Rotary, to talk to their local councillors. And then there's the other route, which is joining a livery company. And people have this idea that they're very rarefied. Well, some of them are rather historical, and in a way membership is limited, but actually they're incredibly welcoming, incredibly useful. And so many people, I'd actually suggest that joining a livery company is the way to go.
And again, can you just join a livery company
Yes,
then?
yes.
Really?
You just send an
Apply,
email.
yeah.
They've all got websites. You send an email to their clerk and tell them a little bit about yourself. Now, some of them are very, very related to your trade. So if you wanted to join my livery company, you would really need to be a librarian, an archivist and so forth. But we have companies like the glass sellers, the glovers, the Laureners, who sometimes in a way they still support their trades. But you know, there are not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people selling glassware anymore. But it's a good, very, you know, there is a livery, I think, for everyone.
It's fascinating.
So to what extent over the years has the Guildhall become a sort of secular cathedral, pulling all of these functions and livery companies and so on together?
I think it's always been. I think a secular cathedral is a very good description of it. The other words I've heard that I really like is London's sitting room, London's front room, because that room is used for everything from fashion shows to, I mean, you can hire it. It's not cheap, but it's not a private space. It's used for events, so parties after Wimbledon, and quite often it is open to the public. Not as much as it used to be because it is so popular for events.
Is there agreement on how long before the current Guildhall was there a Guildhall or a Guild equivalent sitting on that site?
We're not quite sure, but of course we're on the site of the Roman amphitheatre.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when the Romans left, for a period of years, the city was very sparsely occupied. You had a few people keeping goats and sheep, and it's because the story I hear is the Anglo-Saxons were intensely superstitious, and it's quite funny because if you watch Horrible Histories, they have a sketch about a bunch of fierce Anglo-Saxons who set off for a fight and turn around because they spot a weird-shaped leaf. And they were very superstitious. And the story is that they would not live in the city because of the fear of ghosts. And if you can imagine, in those days, the place must have still been full of Roman remnants. It was Alfred the Great who basically said, this is ridiculous. Move yourselves back here. There are big walls. Because it seems to me that what the Anglo-Saxons used to do was live near the Strand in Aldwych, and every 2 or 3 years, someone would sail up the river, pillage and loot and burn their villages down. They'd run to the hills and then they'd come back again. So
it happened frequently.
It happened all the time. And
don't you talk about this in your book? The
book that you've read,
your recently produced
Tam.
book on the Strand.
The one that you've read, Tam.
Well, I can get a copy of it. Yours and Rob's books are already out of print.
I'm working on that. Yeah. It's already out of print. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, you've got to have a word with your publishers. You know, it's commercial good sense maybe to have really
It's not
small
quite
runs.
as best-selling as our esteemed colleague here, but yeah, that's perfectly true. The ruins must have occupied they must have haunted the inhabitants, I think, because they would have seen them on the horizon, and looking to the east with the setting sun in the west, they would have been silhouetted against the sky. And of course, the Forum was the largest north of the Alps, the Roman Forum. So there were some very impressive buildings the ruins of buildings that were here, but they must have gradually become buried in the soil, because the amphitheatre now at the Guildhall, of course, is at least 25, 30 feet below.
It's 20 metres or so below the ground. And I mean, the interesting thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen the series The Last Kingdom. They have a wonderful scene where they have Alfred the Great. He's in London and he's literally talking, and there's still a kind of portico of Roman columns behind him, which is great. It's complete nonsense, of course. But because of that, because the Guildhall is on the site of the Roman amphitheatre. Now, if you're interested in psychogeography, the claim is, but it might be somewhat more prosaic than that. It might have just been a very good source for stone and building materials. And it seems that pretty much from the moment that Alfred was here, a Guildhall was there.
Yeah.
But it was more comparable to a cathedral close, the old cathedrals, where you get a jumble of buildings that move around and get rebuilt. Because we know the court's been there for a long time. We're not sure. What I do know is my predecessor used to have to live in a room behind the court below the Chamberlain in the early medieval
Was it
era.
haunted?
You know, there aren't any ghosts in Guildhall.
Wonder why.
Have you ever heard this
They're
phrase?
just very clever ghosts.
Well,
They
I
don't-
was always told there's actually a general lack of ghosts in the City of London, if you compare it to Westminster and other places. And it was suggested to me, it was probably my granddad actually, or someone like that suggested to me, the reason is that the history of the City of London is so appalling and so horrible and so full of violence and nastiness. Who needs ghosts?
I thought you were going to say the ghost ran away.
Well, yeah, maybe they did.
An alternative explanation, of course, is that there are very few, or there have been very few tourists in the City of London, and ghosts attract tourists, which is maybe why, if I was being cynical.
There's a lot of chicken and egging going on here, eh?
Or
when we
tourists
talk about
attract ghosts,
psychogeography.
yes. It's which way around.
Yeah.
But I think that amphitheatre, I mean, it was rebuilt in Hadrian's time. So the original amphitheatre was wooden,
Yeah,
and then they
of
built
course,
it in stone. And of course, somebody told me, who's an expert in these things once, that they think it was primarily used in a kind of Greek sense, in the sense that it was a place where city business was conducted, where trials took place and so on, rather than it being a place where gladiators were working, if that's what they did.
Like, I think also that they did have, again, something else I heard about the place was actually it was a multi-purpose location. And we always think about gladiators, but gladiators were very expensive and very rarely killed. And you have this idea of lions. There weren't any lions fighting here, with bears and wolves. But I did speak to someone from the Museum of London and said that lady gladiators were quite popular. And you immediately start to, I'm afraid, you put a modern spin and you start to have slightly, you think this is slightly like modern mud wrestling or something. But someone also pointed out to me that a considerable amount of the audience would have been women.
Because
Just because there were lots of women in Roman London and women went to the games. They were, but they had, somebody also said to me, whether this is true or not, but it may well be that the Romans had more bank holidays than we had. They may have had more days off. They actually had more days off than we have now, which I find slightly offensive, whether that's true or not. So they did have a lot of festival days and high days and that they'd celebrate. Because, of course, the Forum was the place where the serious business happened. But Londoners have often always done their serious business in places that don't seem so serious. I mean, pubs like this are a very good example. I do wonder how many deals were cut in this pub in the early 1600s.
And of course, in Roman times, the very first Christian congregations would have met in people's homes in the city, because St. Paul's was built in something like 605. But the earliest records of the Bishop of London go back to the Council of Arles. I think it's early 4th century. And so there is some thought that maybe a predecessor to St. Paul's Cathedral was where the Tower of London is, or just near there. So, of great antiquity.
Wasn't St. Peter's at Cornhill supposed to be a very early Christian in Roman times?
Very, very high.
Yes.
Because the city was City of London was much higher than it is now. It's on more of a bluff, and I think Cornhill was one of the highest.
That was the highest point, wasn't it, of the Roman city?
Yeah, city on a hill.
Because there was some mythical English king who was supposed to have been Christianized. I should have looked up this story beforehand, but...
Well, of course, in mythology, the Guildhall is home to Gog and Magog, or the statues of Gog and Magog, and they form an important part of the city's mythology, don't they, in the founding of London?
Completely fabricated mythology. Was it Troy? Brutus?
They were
Prince of Troy, yes.
refugees from Troy.
I always get the impression that London was rather jealous of Rome and decided that it needed its own Romulus and Remus. Although the giants are good, though, because the giants are a very traditional British thing. We have we have the hills that are named after those.
But this tradition of making stuff up is one of England's great glories, isn't it? Just as the Victorians invented Christmas and so on. Where would the world be without us?
Well, the association of the United Kingdom with giants, however, is a very, very ancient thing. And I think there's even occasions. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I do remember reading somewhere that even some of the classic scholars would describe England, this unknown, smoky, distant island, as being a place where there were giants.
That's right. Brutus, the Prince of Troy, landed in Totnes in Devon. There's a stone called the Brutus stone.
Especially in the West Country.
And he defeated the giants that were there. And there's lots of various rock formations and things which are associated with giants, particularly in the West Country.
Mixture of classical mythology and Christian iconography, David and Goliath and everything.
Yes.
They mixed it all together in a big pot, and out came Gog Magog, or Gog and Magog.
So why did London choose Gog and Magog then?
Who knows?
Yes.
I mean, it's a manufactured myth, but it's a nice one, and I do like the fact that I can't remember off the top of my head whether it's Gog or Magog. One of them has, of course, the phoenix on its shield, and of course London is the Phoenix City, the city that keeps on being destroyed and being rebuilt, and that's a nice touch.
Mm-hmm. And the giants used to be a great feature of the Lord Mayor's show, didn't they?
They still are.
And they're still
I was going to say, yes, do they always appear on the Lord Mayor's show?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So that leaves some Guildhall, is that right?
It does. In fact, on the first people from a livery company, I went back to work the moment the ban was lifted, and the city was a very lonely place. It was like a scene from a dystopian disaster movie, tumbleweed. And I'd been in Guildhall for a couple of weeks, and I came out and I found a series of volunteers from the Worshipful Company of Basket Makers, because they're woven giants, the ones that are called, and they were renovating them. And it felt rather alarming because they didn't have any underwear on. So I saw naked giants. I thought, oh. But it was actually a really reassuring sight, because London does bounce back very quickly. And actually the first group of people I saw in the city working on something was a group of people from an ancient livery company polishing up a pair of giants. I mean, only in London.
As you do. Well, actually, we were sent back. I mean, it was during the whole lockdown. We had to go into work, and wandering down the Strand and Fleet Street with no traffic and there'd been nobody there was quite an extraordinary scene that will probably never be replicated.
We conducted freedom ceremonies online because we had such a backlog building up. And I saw people from intriguing places. I gave the freedom to someone who was bouncing around on the North Atlantic, one of the surveyors who was working in Battersea Power Station, and to a gentleman in a jeep on a mountain in Wales with a sheep looking in at the window as he was given the freedom. It was
very apposite.
All he needed was a bridge.
Yes.
Was there one other aspect that we haven't touched on? And if the answer to this is no, then we'll just edit it out. But aren't you also a qualified city guide?
I am, yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. You don't have to edit that out because we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you still have time for that in the midst of all these other things you do?
Funnily enough, I don't tend to conduct tours for members of the public. I occasionally do it for groups within the city. So occasionally, to help a livery company, I will conduct a tour. And what they do is they charge and then they give the money to their charities. But I do occasionally, I am asked by the city, sometimes if they have a high-profile visitor, a president or a head of state or a diplomat, and they want to give them a bit of light relief, they pass them on to me. So that's the kind of tours I conduct now. I do occasionally get roped in by my family to do them. I think one of those is in the offing. And I have a particular bias when it comes to tours of the city. So,
what is that?
Well, I'm an old goth at heart, so it's really
an old what?
An old goth. And so it's the bad stuff, it's the creepy stuff, it's the plagues, it's the bad behaviour, it's the crime, it's the punishment.
Executions on Smithfield.
Well, to some degree, yes. Yeah. And so that's why I do know where the ghosts are generally.
Such as they are.
I mean, my favourite is actually the Black Dog of Newgate, which, has a lovely story about somebody putting an apothecary or someone who was maybe an alchemist And apparently he was condemned, and he was put in a cell with lots of gentlemen, and they were all starving to death, and so they ate him. And shortly afterwards, this monstrous black dog was seen, and all the men who were involved were hunted down and torn to pieces. And apparently you still see this black beast and you see this shape on the rooftops.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I did see the previous clerk of the company's black lab, Gus, occasionally, but not quite as terrifying.
Was he very scary?
They're too soppy.
Not really, not unless you had a sausage, in which case it was.
So what's next for the City of London?
It's very hard to tell. I think, of course, with issues with tariffs and so forth, I think, the biggest tenants here, and of course, the city is a commune. People don't realise this. It's the world's oldest democratic commune. So we also represent financial services industry. They're our biggest tenants. Things are quite difficult. And I think the city will be, the corporation will be doing everything it can to sort of like help businesses here. On the more cultural side of things, I think something that's really interesting is this sort of shift and this understanding, especially post-COVID, that we need to push our history and our cultural offering. You see the Ned has opened and been a huge success. We've got the Museum of London opening. Because more people should be here at the weekend.
Yes, they should. It should be a proper tourist attraction, shouldn't it?
Yeah. With tourists flooding back into London, this post-COVID tourist boom. Have you seen how busy Westminster is at the moment?
Oh,
it's absolutely
impossible.
rammed.
Yes.
And yet here we have, amazing tourism, lovely views of the Thames.
Perhaps it needs more hotels, does it?
I mean, the thing to be said about hotels is they always have public areas. They always have bars. They always have restaurants that are open. And they tend to be open 7 days a week. And they tend to be open till late.
Mm-hmm. There's some wonderful viewing platforms now, more and more of those, which attract people. They're fantastic, and some of the hotels have roof gardens and things, don't they? Where you can.
There's one opposite Liverpool Street Station, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And the elevator is on the outside of the building.
Yeah.
And you go up, and very
Have you
nice.
been
right. You see the views.
Horizon 22
that is
has
amazing.
fantastic free views, and it's free.
I know.
It's a marvellous thing.
Is the walkie-talkie one free? The garden at the top of the wall?
Is,
I think it
but
is.
I mean,
you have to book or something.
You have to. It's smaller, but I mean, I think, and if it's a really good idea to book Horizon 22. But it's great.
Well, you can book on the day, can't you?
If it's not
just
busy.
say if you know you're going up to London and it's a nice day. You can do it
I mean,
before you
and
go.
that's the other thing I'd say. There's quite a lot of free things to do here. I mean, if people are on limited budgets, the city really is pretty good. I mean, you don't have to pay for the Guildhall Gallery, which is a bit of a secret. People don't know about it. That's free. Horizon 22 is free. And most of the galleries and museums here have something to help people that are on lower incomes, which I think is important.
And it was the Mithraeum, of course, is the other free Roman site, which is very interesting.
That, for example, that's that's a result of the generosity, really, of an American benefactor who's also a Freeman of the City of London. And actually, having met him, a very nice man in terms of being interested. He's interested in London. He's the same person's just given £20 million to the Museum of London.
Good heavens.
My goodness.
So do you find that there is this global interest in the corporation and in the freedom of the city?
There's a global interest in the freedom, absolutely, but also a very local interest. Sometimes, people can be quite critical. They say it's, this is old-fashioned bit of historical. It's either too exclusive, it's not exclusive enough, and you are really, I have to say, it is what it is, and what it is a wonderful historic thing. But it's a genuine legal document.
Yeah.
It is a genuine legal document, and it's a genuine legal status. If you join a livery company, it means you can become a liveryman, you can vote for the Lord Mayor. I mean, of course, that's a whole different story. There is support quite often for Freeman And I think if you live in London or you deal with London, it's just a nice thing to have.
Yeah. Part of a community, as you say.
It is. I mean, it's a fellowship.
It's a club, isn't it?
It's a fellowship.
That's a good word, yes.
Well, this devotion to fellowship and community is something that has long been a strength here. I suppose the key is in keeping it walkable and keep the discovery of the history going on, and more for the Guildhall, more for the pub crawls, more for anything that's going to bring us together. You know, for all the talk about, well, is London as walkable as Paris and so on, and people think of London in the wider sense, certainly the city of London is walkable, has a deep history, with or without ghosts, with or without black dogs and so on. And fantastically, it's got all these great pubs and all these passionate people. Whether it's 40,000 of us or 4,000 of us or even 40, there are a lot of good people here doing interesting things, discovering a whole lot more. I think we're putting a huge amount of faith in the Museum of London when it opens. And with the new courts in Fleet Street coming up, and Guildhall will always be there simply because it always has been there.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think maybe, and in the spirit of the pubs where we say, time, gentlemen, please, time, gentlemen, and lady. Laura, thanks for joining us today.
You're most welcome.
Join us next time from the Ship in Talbot Court off Eastcheap, when our guest will be Henry Williams, formerly of the Evening Standard's Londoners' Diary. He will be filling us in on all the gossip. Imagine such a life of glitz. Tough work, but as they say, someone's got to do it.